The Supreme Court heard oral arguments Monday on the Trump administration's attempt to exclude undocumented immigrants from the census. Both liberal and conservative justices questioned the legality of the move. The census count, conducted every 10 years, is used to award seats in Congress and the Electoral College. For more on this, let's bring in Loyola Law School professor Jessica Levinson. Jessica, thanks very much for being with us. Can you break down the Trump administration's legal argument here?
Yeah, so the Trump administration is saying that because Congress has essentially outsourced the authority to conduct the census to the Department of Commerce, and because the Department of Commerce is an executive agency, that President Trump has the authority to say to the Secretary of Commerce, you know what you should do? You should provide me with two sets of numbers. And the first set will be everybody who lives in this country, which is the set that we're typically accustomed to. And the second set will exclude unauthorized or undocumented immigrants. And then we can use that second set in order to draw congressional district lines, which would, of course, move power away from states that have large immigrant communities and towards states that don't, towards the more rural, less diverse states.
Well, Justice Amy Coney Barrett said to an attorney representing the administration, quote, "A lot of the historical evidence and longstanding practice really cuts against your petition," end quote. So, Jessica, what is the government's longstanding practice regarding the census?
It's really important to know that we have never counted undocumented immigrants as separate. We have never excluded people based on citizenship or based on immigration status. We have always said that counting the whole number of persons includes the whole number of persons, or as the federal law says, the total population, again, without regard to immigration status. And the newest justice on the Supreme Court, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, really has styled herself as an originalist, meaning she looks at what the founders intended when the Constitution was written or when the amendments were ratified. And she's saying, I'm looking at what the understanding is there, and I'm looking at our practice. It doesn't look like you have a winning argument. And it's really important, I think, for people to look at what Justice Barrett is saying, because she obviously is going to hold a lot of sway. And she just did not sound like she was having it when it came to the merits. Now, I think the court is probably going to exclude this case, or decide this case, I should say, on procedural grounds. But it was interesting to hear Justice Barrett's thinking.
Yeah. Well, what is the usual process for redrawing House districts? How does that work typically?
Yeah, so what happens is that we count every 10 years. We obviously count everybody who's here. We count where they are. And then we allocate two of the most important things that you can get from the federal government: funds and people, meaning power. We allocate members of Congress, and that translates into electoral college votes as well, by the way. So what happens is that the president sends a report to Congress, and Congress then uses that report, and state by state, it is state legislatures draw district lines, but those district lines are based on the number of congressional seats that they get based on the census. I'm speaking to you from California. In some states like California, we have an independent redistricting commission. We essentially took that power away from our state lawmakers. In most other states, it's the state lawmakers that draw both the congressional and state district lines.
Well, the Trump administration's plan would exclude an estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants. How did the High Court address this, and which direction does it appear justices are leaning?
Yeah, the court addressed this really by saying, Trump administration, are you sure you have the data that you would even need in order to exclude this approximately 11 million people, in order to, frankly, kind of erase them from being part of America? Because as we know, just because you are here, whether undocumented or documented, your life is still affected by the decisions of representatives. Now, what the Trump administration here tried to argue is, well, we don't have all the data yet, so we don't actually even know if this will affect congressional districts. We don't know if any states will lose seats in the House of Representatives. And the court today, I think it's hard to predict based on oral arguments, but I think there were at least 5 members of the court that basically said some version of, well, if you're not really even sure on the numbers, and if you can get the numbers in time, then maybe we don't need to make a decision right now. Maybe this is premature. And the Trump administration obviously doesn't want this because there's a very big clock. And first of all, there are deadlines in federal law, December 31st to give a report to the president, and then January 10th for the president to give a report to Congress. But of course, there's January 20th where the Trump administration ends. And I suspect that if this is not decided by the end of the Trump administration, that President-elect Biden is going to have no desire to exclude undocumented immigrants from the census.
All right, we'll continue to watch it. Jessica Levinson for us. Jessica, thank you.
Thank you.